Ever feel like you're just drowning in data? You've got these massive spreadsheets full of numbers, but what are they actually telling you? Well, in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you how a simple chart can turn that sea of numbers into a crystal clear story. We're going to build a histogram step by step. Okay, let's get right into it. Seriously, think about it. You've gone to all the trouble to collect a ton of data, and now you're just staring at this giant spreadsheet and it just looks like chaos, right? How do you possibly find the meaning, the pattern, the story in all of that? It's a super common problem, but you know what? There's a really elegant solution. And that solution, my friend, is the histogram. It's a chart that looks pretty simple, but it is incredibly powerful. Its whole job is to bring order to that data chaos. It helps us see the variation that's always there in data. And once you can see it, you can finally start to understand it. So what is it exactly? Well, a histogram is basically a special kind of bar chart that shows you how often different values show up in your data. We're talking about continuous data here, things you can measure like weight, time, or temperature. It's one of the essential 7QC tools for a reason. It just makes complex data so much easier to get your head around instantly. Now, let's clear something up because this is a really common point of confusion. Isn't this just a bar graph? Nope, not quite. A histogram groups continuous data into ranges, or bins. A bar graph, on the other hand, is for comparing totally separate categories, like sales figures for different products. So the key difference is this. Histograms show the distribution of your data, while bar graphs show a comparison between different items. All right, so now that we know what it is and why it's not just a regular old bar graph, let's get to the main event. How do you actually build one? We're going to walk through a simple 7-step process. Ready? So here's our roadmap. It's really straightforward. First, we gather our data. Then, we do a few quick calculations to set things up. After that, we actually build the graph. And then, the best part, we step back and figure out what story our brand new histogram is telling us. First things first, data. Step 1 is simple. Just collect your measurements. But for a histogram to be really reliable and show a meaningful pattern, you need a decent amount of data. A great rule of thumb is to shoot for at least 100 data points. That gives the patterns a chance to really emerge. Step 2, find the range of your data. This is super easy and it sets the foundation for our chart. All you do is find the biggest value in your data set and subtract the smallest value from it. That's it. This tells you the total spread you have to work with. Let's do a quick example. Imagine the highest value we measured was 442 and the lowest was 204. We just subtract 204 from 442 and our range is 238. Simple as that. This number is basically the canvas that we're about to draw our histogram on. Okay, now we're on to steps 3 and 4, which is all about setting up our bins. Bins are just a fancy word for the bars of our histogram. Think of them like buckets we're going to sort our data into. First, you decide how many bars you want. Honestly, somewhere between 7 and 12 usually works great. Then you calculate how wide each bar needs to be by dividing the range by the number of bars. So with our bins all defined, step 5 is just the counting phase. You go through all your data points and just tally up how many of them fall into each bin. This count, the frequency, is what's going to determine the height of each bar on our graph. And now we're ready for the big moment, actually drawing the graph. To make sure your histogram is super clear and easy to read, you'll want to include these 5 key things. First, a good title so everyone knows what they're looking at. Your vertical y-axis shows the frequency, the counts we just did, and the horizontal x-axis shows our intervals or bins. Then you just draw on your bars, and you're pretty much there. And finally, we're at step 7. We've built the thing, but the real magic is in the analysis. The shape of the graph is the story. It reveals insights about your process that you would never, ever see just by looking at a raw list of numbers. So what kind of stories can these shapes tell us? Let's take a look at a few of the most common patterns you're going to run into and what they actually mean. This is the classic, the normal distribution, also known as the bell curve. It's that perfect symmetrical shape with the big hump in the middle. When you see this, it often means your process is stable and predictable. Most values are clustered around the average, with fewer and fewer as you get further away. That's a process in balance. But what if your graph is lopsided? Well, that's a skewed distribution. The peak is pushed off to one side, and you've got this long tail on the other. This is a huge clue. It might mean something is physically limiting your process, or maybe your settings are off. That tail is basically pointing you towards something you need to investigate. Now this one is really interesting. The bimodal or double-peaked distribution. If you see two peaks in your graph, it is a massive red flag. It almost always means you're looking at data from two different processes that got mixed together. Maybe it's data from two different machines or two different shifts. It's a clear signal to go separate that data and analyze it again. So, we've covered what a histogram is, how to build one, and how to read the patterns. But let's really nail down why this simple chart is so important. It's all about turning that messy, raw data into smart, confident decisions. I mean, think about it. You can summarize a huge data set in a single picture. You can spot patterns at a glance. You can make decisions that are backed by actual evidence. It's a fantastic tool for forecasting problems, and maybe the best part is it's really easy to use and understand. I love how our source material puts it here. A histogram is a necessary tool. Its real power is in how fast you can get to an insight. It lets you quickly identify patterns, trends, and outliers, which is always the first step toward real problem solving and making things better. So, there you have it. The tool is now in your hands. The only question left is, when you apply this to your own data, what story will your histogram tell? I'm genuinely excited for you to find out. Thanks for hanging out with me.